Welcome to this episode. Subscribe as soon as possible. Chapter 9. The Forest of Steles in the Mirror Abyss. The moment Lu Chen's fingertips touched the wall of the karst cave, the bronze eyepiece suddenly emitted a beeping sound. Cold light climbed up his eyebrow bone along the frame of the eyepiece, casting fine golden patterns in his pupils. The tracks of geothermal vein energy flowing, like the star maps recorded in ancient books, outlining thousands of glowing veins in the darkness. King Luan, give me the Jade Kong. His voice was low, but the tremor was still palpable. The densely packed engravings on the stone wall gradually became visible under the analysis of the eyepiece. In the depressions covered by moss, there were actually dozens of glowing names. The three characters Lu, Ming, Shu at the bottom still had newly chiseled marks. Beside it was an unfinished star map, and every stroke matched the glaze cracks of the Rookhill porcelain washer. King Luan's breath was close to his ear, carrying the unique damp smell of the Sishan mine cave. She pressed the Lianju Jade Kong against the stone wall, and the milky white pattern suddenly glowed red, like an awakened bloodline. Is this the Forest of Steles of the Mirror, Masters? There was surprise in her voice as her fingertips stroked the name Lu Xiaoming, the 12th generation Mirror Master, Lu Chen's ancestor. The stalactites hanging from the top of the karst cave suddenly resonated, and fine cracks appeared on the surface of the stalagmites, each echoing the engravings on the ground from afar. Only then did Lu Chen realize that the entire karst cave was a huge geothermal vein energy crystal. Those seemingly natural patterns were actually a conductive matrix poured with Sishan hematite powder. Look at this! King Luan's fingers stopped in front of a raised stone wall. There was a carved butterfly with outstretched wings, and the patterns on its wings were exactly the same as those of the Rookhill porcelain washer that Lu Chen had repaired. When her birthmark touched the engraving, the entire stone wall suddenly lit up, and countless light spots overflowed from the patterns, gathering in the air to form a dynamic projection. Lu Chen's pupils suddenly contracted. In the projection, a craftsman in Song Dynasty clothing was repairing a porcelain bowl. Golden light flickered at the cracks, the materialization of geothermal vein energy. Every time the craftsman outlined a kintsugi pattern, small Liangju characters would appear at the bottom of the bowl, recording the date and mood of the repair. Is this the restoration scene of the pre-civilization? King Luan's voice trembled. Did they already know about the existence of the geothermal veins? Lu Chen didn't answer. The Tiaodong de Shuju in the eyepiece had already given the answer. The gold powder used by the craftsman contained iridium 192, the same as the composition of the porcelain washer's body. The frequency of the engravings on the bottom of the bowl actually perfectly matched the golden ratio of the Earth's core rotation. Even more astonishingly, there was a light golden birthmark on the inner side of the craftsman's left wrist, with a shape exactly the same as King Luan's. The symbiotic relationship between the vessel and the Mirror Master already existed in the pre-civilization. Lu Chen murmured to himself, his fingers stroking the name Yuxin on the stone wall, the mysterious woman in the Song Dynasty kill sacrifice records. At this moment, in the form of a holographic projection, she was holding up the repaired porcelain bowl in front of them. The faint light seeping from the cracks of the bowl gathered on the ground to form a huge star map, and each light spot corresponded to a geothermal vein node around the world. Suddenly, King Luan grabbed his wrist, her fingernails almost digging into his skin. Lu Chen, look over there! Her voice carried an unprecedented tremor. In the center of the star map, the characters Lu Chen were impressively engraved at the position of Sishan. The edges of the characters glowed with a metallic luster, as if they had just been engraved. And within the strokes of the character Lu, there was a tiny micro-carving of the Starfall clan emblem, an encrypted symbol that could only be decoded by the Mirror Master token. This is impossible, double quotes. Lu Chen took a half step back, and the Mirror Master token in his pocket was getting hot. He suddenly remembered the fragment his father had stuffed into his hand before his death. At that time, the old man said, "Flaws are the language of the geothermal veins, and you are the translator." Now he finally understood that the so-called translator was never a passive interpreter but a participant engraved in the geothermal vein memory. The rumbling sound of gears turning came from the depths of the karst cave. A crack opened in the center of the star map, revealing the bottomless geothermal vein core. Lu Chen's token automatically levitated and fit perfectly into the depression on the stone wall. A flash of golden light passed, and the true appearance of the Forest of Steles was revealed. It was the restoration records of the previous 12 civilizations. Every engraving was a symbiosis code written by the mirror, masters, and vessels with their lives. King Lun's birthmark started to get hot. She pressed her chest and suddenly saw countless overlapping images. The Liangju priest inserting the Jade Kong into the geothermal vein node, the Mayan shaman chanting incantations beside the volcanic rift, and her father at the scene of the 1998 mine disasters, stuffing the blood-stained Mirror Master token into her yons. These memories came flooding in, turning into flowing light patterns in her Eye of Civilization. "They've been waiting for us," King Luen whispered, her voice carrying the desolation of spanning thousands of years. "The mirror, masters and vessels of the previous 12 civilizations have all left their last hopes here." She pointed to the top of the Forest of Steles, where a line of weathered ancient characters was engraved. "When the 13th rift appears, humanity will learn to coexist with flaws." Lu Chen followed her gaze and found that half of a bronze mirror was embedded in the strokes of that line of characters, exactly the Eye of the Mirror Abyss, mentioned in his father's diary. When he reached out to touch the mirror surface, countless fragments emerged from the void, piecing together the scenes of the destruction of the 12 civilizations. Atlantis suffered a tsunami due to purifying the flaws in the ocean. The Mayans became extinct due to the single corn gene. Each scene was accompanied by violent fluctuations of geothermal vein energy, until the DNA double helix of modern humans appeared in the center of the picture and finally calmed down. Defect rate 37.2%. Lu Chen read out the number at the bottom of the picture, recalling the mysterious proportion that repeatedly appeared in his father's notes. This is the critical value for the survival of civilization. The previous 12 civilizations failed to break through it, and we ... And we are creating the 13th possibility. King Luen took over. The king of Liangju Jade Kong emitted a warm light in her palm. She suddenly understood why the blood of the vessel could activate the geothermal vein nodes. It was not a curse of sacrifice, but a symbiotic interface deliberately cultivated by the pre-civilization, allowing humanity to perceive the emotions of the geothermal veins in a biological form. The stalactites on the top of the karst cave began to fall rustlingly. King Lun's birthmark was faintly visible in the strong light. She saw her blood flowing along the stone wall patterns, outlining a complete star map below the characters Lu Chen, and Lu Chen's Mirror Master token was absorbing this energy, with complex patterns that had never been seen before appearing on its surface. "They're coming." Lu Chen suddenly pressed her shoulder. The bronze eyepiece showed that multiple energy reactions were approaching. Those light spots were flickering on the star map, exactly the logo of the association. He tightly held the token, and the Forest of Steles suddenly emitted a beeping sound. All the engravings lit up, forming a golden barrier. When King Luen turned around, she saw the cold light of Sogdian bronze flashing in the shadow of the cave entrance. The leading killer raised his hand, and the glaze drop scar of the Glaze Color Society was revealed on his cuff. The crossbow was already loaded, and the arrowhead glowed with the blue light of Seishan iron ore, a special weapon that could interfere with geothermal vein resonance. "Protect the Forest of Steles." Lu Chen's voice was amplified by the geothermal vein energy, and the token turned into a light shield. King Luen instinctively stood in front of him. The king of Liangju Jade Kong burst out with strong light, and the figures of those killers distorted and disintegrated in the light, finally turning into dust, revealing the association chips hidden in their pupils, a product transformed by the perfect gene technology of the pre-civilization. After the dust settled, the Forest of Steles returned to calm. Lu Chen bent down and picked up a piece of the killer's Yijing Suipian. Half of a glaze-colored butterfly was embroidered on it, exactly the same as the symbol in his father's diary. King Luen knelt in front of the engraving of Lu Mingshu, and found that a line of small characters had been added below her father's name. The 13th generation Mirror Master, go and be the bridge between humanity and the geothermal veins. "We should go." Lu Chen helped her up, his gaze falling on the stone door at the end of the Forest of Steles. There were 12 star rings engraved there, the same as those on the porcelain washer, and the 13th position was empty, as if waiting for something. He suddenly remembered his father's words, "The Mirror Master is not a restorer, but a witness to the right of choice of civilization." King Luan nodded, and her birthmark was clearly visible in the strong light. She knew that from today on, they were no longer just adventurers seeking the truth, but symbionts chosen by the geothermal veins, using the flaws of humanity as the key to open the path of symbiosis for the 13th civilization. Outside the karst cave, the night was deep. The outline of Sishan loomed in the starry sky. The mine cave cracks, which were regarded as flaws, were now emitting a soft light, echoing the glazed tiles of the Forbidden City and the murals of Dunhuang from afar. Lu Chen reached into his pocket and touched the fragment of the porcelain washer, feeling its resonance with the forest of Steles, an invitation spanning thousands of years and the hope for the survival of civilization. "King Luan," he said softly, "do you hear it?" She closed her eyes and heard the sound of the geothermal veins flowing in the rock layers, like an ancient ballad. The rifts eroded by time, the warnings engraved by the pre-civilization with their lives, were now roaring in her blood vessels, resonating with her heartbeat. "I hear it!" She held his hand, and both the birthmark and the token glowed. That's the heartbeat of the Earth, and also the heartbeat of humanity. Deep in the karst cave, the gears of the geothermal vein core began to turn, counting down for the choice of the 13th civilization. And they were standing at the starting point of the rift, witnessing a great story of flaws and symbiosis slowly unfolding. This episode ends here. The next episode will be even more exciting. Subscribe now.